I would like to now talk about the ALZ-Ease.
That's kind of one of our magical ones, I have to say. You want to tell them what ALZ stands for, Martin?
Well, I speculate it's the abbreviation of Alzheimer's. Is it?
That's that's
I wonder
correct.
why you didn't call it memory ease or something like that.
Well, I'm
Oh,
actually it says memory underneath it.
yes.
With it, it just kind of I like the sound of it.
AL,
ALZ.
ALZ-Ease. All right. Well,
ALZ.
so how does it work?
Can I give you a little background how we came to this
Oh, please.
formula? This is one of those fun things that I did again, sort of without thinking. Um, Obviously, had known about Alzheimer's for many years, and this goes back quite a few years actually, because we were at the other clinics. It's probably about 6 years now. There was a news magazine. We used to get a lot of them for free because we had a medical doctor there, so they were always sending magazines to the doctor's office for free. Well, on the magazine, it was broken into quarters, and they had pictures of people younger than me, and the article was called "The New Face of Alzheimer's," and these were people getting serious Alzheimer's in their 40s and 50s. It was very, very tragic. Well, there was excellent photography, and photography is a hobby of mine. I just love it. So I know a lot about lighting and all of these things, and I've also been an iridologist for decades and decades and used to teach it. Iridology, folks, by the way, is the science of reading the irises of the eye. So I was looking at the cover of the magazine, and I really wasn't interested because that was something that nobody could do. Well, I happened to notice in all four people, because it was the same exact setup, and the photographer, thank you, whoever you are, for this, and I noticed that there was all of four people's eyes, there were males and females, they were very, very, very shiny, which meant that they were refracting light. Well, upon closer examination, they were done. This was probably done with film in those days, and they were probably medium format pictures to get that kind of resolution. So that means it was like a 6 by 6 negative it came from. So the detail on these things were just extraordinary. Well, I went, well, would you look at that? They all have that. So I opened up into the article, and they did that again with the people. Every person had that configuration. Well, that's I was almost going to tell you my secret on that one, but I won't. But what it was, it means there's a particular type of deficiency in the potassium spectrum, which, I happen to have a patent for on that in the fibromyalgia formula. So I said, well, would you look at that? What's showing is that they have massive buildups of fibrinous material in their brains or in their bodies, period. But from this, that means that they would be building up in their brains also, rather than just in the soft tissue or not in the soft tissue. Well, since I have the technology of it, that was fascinating. So I went, that looks like a missing link to me. So I thought, okay, so let's rebuild that so that we can get at the cerebral regions. So then let's just assume that some of the entangling material in there is fibrin. Well, fibrin is several times denser than regular tissue, and it's also very. If you want to leave actually the formula, but we'll talk a little bit about it from that. Thank you. It's very hard and can be abrasive. So the thought was, well, if we just kind of clean it up from the neuron heads, what guarantee do we have that the neuron heads themselves are not damaged? Well, herbal-wise, and this was not my discovery, the rest of this was based on really good, solid herbal work that I studied from Dr. Christopher and Dr. Shook, who are my two main, especially Dr. Shook. Dr. Shook is like my lifetime inspiration. And secondly, Dr. Christopher. Well, of course, they had formulas, and I studied all kinds of neurological herbology for a number of years and worked with that. So we made modules from this and then plugged it all in together. So the formula then, hopefully what it does, seems to, in fact, works incredibly well, helps to cause a reabsorption of the exudated fibrinous material cerebrally. Then it helps to repair the neuron heads. And then the third assumption that we went on was, hey, why should we just assume that because the neuron heads are cleaned up that they're going to start firing again? So we have a part for that. And then we hyperoxygenate the body a bit with it, put a director herb in, and the first person I gave it to was a wonderful woman who was a patient for years, and her husband, well, he was probably about my age at the time now, which was middle 60s. They had a grandson who's a big football player guy. They were sitting at the table one day, and the grandfather said to the grandson, "Who are you? I've never seen you before." Well, the grandson's heart just broke. So anyhow, we said, "Would you like to try this out?" We actually have a few people that have been on it for quite a long time, just to test it to keep them going. And within a few days, he came out of that fugue. Sometime later, he took a part-time job again and drove his grandson around and could find his way home and, lived for some time. Now, importantly is there was a lady who was in her later 80s at the time who I guess was having a very difficult time. She couldn't speak. She was like in a daycare. Personal hygiene and everything was just off. She couldn't do much. She's been on the herbs for quite a long time, but in a short while her hygiene became great. She could talk some. She played cards. She kept conversations. She couldn't go out and drive her car or do anything like that, but she can function and talk, and this is what we find. It'll take them to some degree. Some people recover very well. If it's been very bad, it can really increase the quality of life. We tried so hard to get this to the Alzheimer's Association, and typical things like that. They said, "Are you a drug company?" No. This is, "Well, when you're a pharmaceutical company, come back and we'll talk to you." So it's really a shame, but this is really one of those products that should really be out. There's a few of them, the cortisol product, this one, and once we get the PTSD cortisol project launched, this is the one I'm going after next. My grandpa can remember the day of the week, the month of the year, but the scariest part was he forgot how to take me home. Okay, I hadn't tell him how to get home, and the really scary part was he had been taking me home and so on. He remembers much better. He doesn't ask the same questions, and he remembered how to get to places. After that one time I told him how to take me home. It saved my grandpa and my family, and I thank him. Yeah, that's the lady, her husband. So, at Earthfriend, we do what we do because we've just been doing it for so long. As I mentioned earlier, we started in the town at the same time as a wonderful company, Gaia, who's just, they make the most wonderful stuff, and Jeremy Rose / New Moon, who got sold, by the way, recently to a big company. The guy who owned Jeremy Rose / New Moon owned a small health food store, and the guy who owns or is the president of Gaia was his manager. And the three of us started herbs right around the same time, but they were very much into companies and things like that. I just wanted to serve. I mean, that's just closest to my heart. I'm not a business person, you could tell. If I was, I'd have one of the biggest herb companies in the world with what we do. But I will say this, Martin, if I went that route, I never would have developed these because these were developed in the practice. And I just want to say there's something that happens to me when I'm ready these days to design, is I see something and it's in front of me all the time and it breaks my heart. And when my heart breaks, I know that it's something cool is going to happen. When we're off, I'm going to tell you about something that's really outrageous on it, even for me.
I hear you.
But
all right.
This,
so for this particular, let's stay on topic for now. The ALZ-Ease, take it preventively, take it at mildest symptoms, and even if you're just having difficulty recalling things.
Yes, we have folks that take it, they go, I'm just my memory's not what it used to be. Wow, sharpens it up really nicely. They're coming out with all of this new information. They're doing fantastic things. The doc's working on this. Is that they're finding that people often can, in other words, before the symptoms even start, that they're finding that this begins years ahead of time building up. So it's a wonderful, wonderful prophylactic, on this, and it's really given the quality of life, or a much better quality of life, to pretty much everyone that's used it.
Yeah, Elijah, I hear from a lot of people who call it brain fog, or call their symptoms brain fog. Would you say that this could ease that as well, or no?
Well, possibly, but there's other things that can cause that. Even a bad cervical problem can give you a bad brain fog because pressure on
or sugar management, or glucose management, and the likes, right? All that.
There can be a lot of things like that. So it's hard to say. Brain fog is different than memory loss. I know I've had brain fog a few times when I was really sick a few years ago, and that's what brought this fungus formula. My head felt like it was full of chopped brown paper. Seriously, I didn't have memory loss. I just couldn't think. When that cleared up, I was thinking really well again. My memory came back on that. So it can happen from a number of different sources. Sometimes mixed medications don't work right, and sometimes, as you know, even supplements a person could be allergic to. A person with bad gluten allergies, for example, will have terrible brain fog on it. So, it comes down to the specific thing. My formulas are very specific. They're not this big spectrum for everything. We kind of go in surgically like this, and just really look for the root cause of this particular problem. So they're one-trick ponies, but a lot of these ponies can jump the Grand Canyon. That's a great trick. One trick, but look at that. And we're talking the long way, not the short way across there. We're talking the long way. It's a good jump. So I always encourage people, if you can find out what's going on, with a better sense with it, that's when you really get the success with anybody's formulas, really.
Great. Well, thank you.